McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. I hope you're ready for the most dippable chicken in McDonald's history. Dip it in all the sauces. Dip it in that hot sauce in your bag. Dip it in your McFlurry. Your dip is your business. McCrispy strips at McDonald's.
Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Okay, hello and welcome to Must Love Books podcast. Today I am sitting with author DM Needom, who is a multifaceted storyteller and creative mind. DM Needom's passion for storytelling started at an early age when she created stories in her mind. Eventually, she began to put them on paper. She first pursued a career in music and modeling, but found her niche in the film industry, where she worked in various capacities, including acting and line production. Although her career eventually led her to the corporate world, her love for writing never waned. Born in New Orleans, DM Needom now resides with her 3 furry companions in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. She found her passion for motherhood as a stepmother and later found love with her second husband, with whom she enjoyed 16 years of happiness. Welcome, everyone, DM Needom, also known as Donna.
Hi, thanks for
Hi,
having
how
me.
are you? I'm happy to
good.
have you here.
I'm good. You know, the weather's a little bit dicey, but it's good.
Yeah, the weather in the Chicago area is always pretty dicey.
Anyway,
So you are the author of the Better to Burn Out series. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the books that you have out in this series?
the Better to Burn Out series, it's an interesting thing how it all came about, because initially the book that launched the series I wrote at Barnes, and that's how I met your lovely mother, Carrie. But I was working on this book for 30 years, not the book that I released, but I was working on a book for 30 years. And my husband was in dialysis, so I started hanging out at Barnes and Crystal Lake. And how this all came about was I decided to write this one book, but it wasn't going to be a book. It was just going to be a blog. It was going to be a marketing tool about this drug addict who was a character in the 30-year novel. He was going to be just a side character he was a serious head case. He's a rock star with serious addiction problems. And so I started writing this blog. And as I wrote this blog, I started having rehab centers follow. So this kind of moved along to, I started about by day 70 of this, I decided, okay, I'm going to turn this into a book. And the reason why I'm going into this lengthy detail about it, because it wasn't supposed to be a series. I'm like, okay, I'm going to turn it into a book. I'm going to kill him off. I'm going to end the book with his daughter getting his journal, and as a tale of, this is what not to do with your life. So I write the ending and I'm driving along, and yes, I'm intuitive. So for you guys that are going to sit there and go, she's hearing voices. So I'm intuitive, and I hear my character tell me, I got a better idea for you. And I'm like, yeah, right. He goes, no, I got a better idea. Okay. So I ran with his idea, which then opened up the series. Because he was basically like, if you don't kill me off, you're going to have more books. If you kill me off, well, you're limiting yourself. And so that's what happened. So the series is set in the 1980s. However, that first book is partially set in the 1990s. Or is it? Because it's really kind of an addict who is basically, he's totally lost. He's lost in his head. He's lost in his life. He doesn't know where he's going. And the book starts out, and I admit this, the book starts out in 1984. So you have to pay attention. So the second book I wrote is Fairy Tales and I Love You. The first book is My Days with the Dark Muse. The second book I wrote is Fairy Tales and I Love You, and that is told from the girl's point of view. This woman in his dream, he had this life with, and yes, I kind of gave the book away, because at the end of My Days, he wakes up in 1984. He never lived this life. It was a life that he thought he lived. And after I finished writing it, there was evidence to show that he actually, that people have actually done that. They've been in a coma, lived a whole life with somebody, and wake up to realize that none of that happened.
Wow.
So yeah, so this is, now I've given the ending away, but for a lot of, it's been out since 2019, but a lot of people are like, what the heck did I just read? So the second book starts off with her having a dream. She ends up meeting him, and they end up going through this whole relationship thing. They tried to discover she doesn't like him. She really doesn't like him. Even though this was a guy that hung on her wall, she's come to the realization that as he described himself to her, you just think I'm a walking cock, because that's all she sees is his vibrato. She doesn't see anything else but this egotistical guy. And what she wants from him is to be real. So we go through this whole thing. Now, the third book, which is Love Just Another High, is the same story, but from his perspective. And while I did this, there's a reason I did this, because in Fairy Tales and I Love You, Ava does not necessarily start off with Nigel. She starts off with this other person. And half of that book is written with her and that other person. And that other person happens to be one of Nigel's best friends. So there's this whole
Ooh.
thing in this whole thing in Is Love Just Another High, you get to see where Nigel's coming from. And in both books, I try to play with the ethereal connection of, because I deal with the metaphysics of us being connected in our dream world, of that energy that sometimes when you touch somebody, you can feel that energy transfer, that connection that is unspoken. In Ava's book, in Fairy Tales, you get her getting a psychic reading, an intuitive reading. In Nigel's book, you have him getting a tarot reading. So I play with the things that I do on the side in bringing it in to make it more palatable for some people and give them a better understanding. So when I got to, because at the end of those two books, these two crazy fools get married. So then the last book that is out in the series right now, which is Spirit of the Times, I have now forced these two people that were impetuous and got married and everything is just perfect to suddenly be yanked into the real world of his life of being a celebrity. And this is 1984, so we don't have the internet, but we still have the paparazzi, we still have the crazed fans, we still have people making remarks that you don't, that aren't nice. And the one thing I left out is Ava is a trauma survivor. So being placed into these situations and not having dealt with her trauma is kind of an awkward thing. So they have a lot of pressure on them, and it's not just from the outside sources. So I try to take this couple, he's 22, she's 18, so they're both very young, and force them into this world of total chaos. And how do they survive? And then Ava ends up pregnant. So now, and we're about to, I'm writing the next book in this series, but when I start, there's going to be roughly 10 books, because for the last 4 years, between the 2019 and the 2023 releases, I sat down and wrote a lot. So I hope that cleared that up. I could have given you a nice little
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm excited that there's more to come.
There is a lot
And
more.
how many do you have out so far?
So far I have, well, I should say this. I have 4 that belong hardcore to the series. There's another book called Love is Worth Waiting For. That is a standalone book in this series. And the reason that happened is because I was going to do a contest with Avon, and which I normally don't name, but I was going to do this contest. It was an open call. And I wrote the book. I got to the part where the contract says if we write another book that is similar to yours, you can't come after us. And maybe that's standard contract language, but I wasn't going to take that chance. So I kept the book back, added a couple of scenes, brought in a couple of the characters from my series, and made it a standalone set in 1997. All the books in the series, except for the first one and the standalone right now, are set in the 80s. So 1984, 85. Those books, the other two books I mentioned, are set from 1997 for Nigel's, and for Love is Worth Waiting For, we go from 1990 to roughly 1997. So my job as a writer, now that I have fixed myself in certain points with Love is Worth Waiting For, and with my days with the Dark Muse, I have to see these I have to follow for sure from Love is Worth Waiting For. My days, it's more or less, is he going to be able to beat the things he thought that happened in his coma, or are they destined to happen?
Ooh, I really like that. I'm excited to see how much of his coma world and interacts with his actual reality.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
I
I wanted to
also
play with. Go ahead.
I also really do love the idea of a standalone that is related but not directly a part of the series. I think that is such a cool way to see things from a different perspective while still experiencing that world. I love that.
And that's what there's going to be other couple of standalones, because there's one when I first got published was in 2010, and I wrote a vampire story called Immortal Love. And when I was working on that, I had no intention of expanding it or anything. But when the Avon contest came along, I started to expand that. And everybody loves a good vampire story. And that's my story that I actually won an award for. So I started playing with it, and I had already brought it into the series, figuring Ava could star in this movie one day. So it's going to be a standalone part of the series, even though it's a vampire book, but it's a movie that Ava and another character, Mason, will end up starring in the books, but you can actually read the novel separately, and they'll still be part of the
That,
series.
oh, that is great. What a creative way to combine two completely different kinds of stories. I mean, what else would a vampire story have to do with a very not vampire story? That is awesome.
So and that's the thing. I mean, most Rockstar series, you have the story of the bass player, you have the story of the guitarist, you have the story of, and the fact is, I don't do that. I'm making, as some of my readers have said, a saga, because I'm not focusing on the drum. I'm not focusing on the lead singer. It's the core of this story of these people. And yes, they'll have side books of some of these other people, but most of the time not, because somebody from Love is Worth Waiting For, everybody's like, why did you do that to him? I want to know why he became like that. Okay, so now I have to go back in time. And but the thing about writing in the 80s and the 90s is you have to deal with different technology, you have to deal with different places, and so it's a different feel than most stories that are going to come out. Like in Love is Worth Waiting For, I do use the fake relationship trope. However, usually the fake relationship trope in a romance novel will take you to the point of, oh, I'm going to, they're going to fall in love, right? That's usually what happens in those fake relationships. Oh, no, no, the fake relationship trope is this guy has said, if you marry me for 5 years, if you're my wife for 5 years, I'll make the man you love, who you can't be with, I'll make him a recording star.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so it's like they're not going to fall in love. It'll never be that. And so that's why it's kind of like I try to take these tropes and try to play with them a little bit. The rock star romance trope, while most people would say that this would be a rock star romance, the last three books I wrote, and even Love is Worth Waiting For, Days is not a romance, except with his love of cocaine. So, I mean, there's this whole dichotomy of, you can't really pigeonhole these novels, and that's in a way, it's a harder thing for me to market, because I try to write the books where if you haven't read Days, you can still pick up Fairy Tales and I Love You and read it and it'd be just fine. You can still pick up Love Just Another High without reading the first two books, because you're getting Nigel's perspective. So those three books can be read independently. The coma is referred back to, but and at one point in coming up, Nigel will give Ava Days to read. He will give her the journal so she knows about that life.
Oh,
So
wow. That's a really great way to interconnect everything.
I'm trying.
That is really cool. So you are working on book number 5 in the
Five.
series right now?
Yeah. Got to Get High to Fall
Excellent.
Solo, which originally was supposed to be book 2, and I pulled it. And I'll borrow pieces from my writing. That's one thing everybody's like, don't get rid of your writing. I'm like, I never do. I never do, because you never know when a scene might work with another character. And that's what happened. Love is Worth Waiting For, I had to write in 30 days. And so, yeah, I admit there was some scenes from my 30-year novel that I took and put in there.
I mean, 30
And
days, that's that's impressive.
it is, because I think it's like almost 100,000 words.
Oh
So
my goodness.
it was one of those things where it's like, I knew scenes that would resonate from other books and make it happen. And that was the first time I never thought I was capable of writing a novel in a month, honestly. Never. And that was I did it. So will I do it again? I doubt it. But
What were your days like writing a 30-day novel?
pretty much because hubby was in dialysis and he knew what I was doing. He was like, just go upstairs and write. I'll fix dinner, go upstairs and write. Go do I would take care of him when I had to, but he was like, go upstairs and do what you gotta do. My husband was very supportive of me in this endeavor, much more so than my first husband. And it was like he knew what I had to do. He knew how hard I had to press. And the thing is, when I write, I tend to take scenes. I write out of order a lot of the time too. I take scenes and I remember them so well that, okay, I know that I can grab this scene and move it over here from that book. So that's the one thing I have to say. I love technology because I used to handwrite or type. And so having a computer to be able to go and grab a file and copy and paste and put it in a different document works out beautifully.
Yeah, that
So
makes it a
it
lot easier to organize.
yeah, definitely. However, I mean, I have a Mac, but I will say it was much easier when I was using a regular Windows computer to find things. It's not as easy on a Mac, I don't think. But the thing is also learning from 2019. I mean, when I wrote all that stuff, most of it was in Word. Now I can use Scrivener, I can use Atticus. So there's different ways now to actually write and format your books and get everything done at the same time. So things are a little bit easier now than when I started this.
Oh, that is awesome. Now,
So
we already went over what your 30-day novel was like. Talk us through what your writing day is like today.
there are days where it's feast or, I mean, there's days where it's feast. I mean, there was a Mother's Day, I think 2 years ago, that I wrote a scene that was 6,000. I wrote 6,000 words in one day, which isn't a lot for some and it's a lot for others. But it was a horrific scene because this woman is losing her child. And so, what a way to celebrate Mother's Day. Nice and
Yeah,
happy,
perfect
huh?
for Mother's Day. Wonderful.
So, I mean, I wrote this and it's like it was just when I am on, I am on. But now that the husband has passed, it's not as I can't just sit here and write and just ignore getting dishes done or getting, there's certain things I have to do now. But sitting down to write is one of those things where it really calls to passion because when I used to take acting, the one thing the teacher told me was you have to live in the moment. And I took that rule and I applied it to my writing. I've always kind of lived in the moment, even when I was writing in high school. And when you were talking in my bio about creating stories in my head, the fact is I would take myself because I was a kid of divorce and back in the 70s, that was very still not the norm. And so I would take TV shows, watch TV shows and put myself as a character in the TV show, whether it be Heart to Heart or Battlestar Galactica or whatever. It was like, I did that. I mean, Boxy suddenly had a kid sister, and I was in, Battlestar Galactica, and it was like these were things that I felt the need to do to escape, and so it was easy to do it as a writer. And so for me, if I don't take the time to write, I would say at least a couple of days a week, it starts bothering me because that creative energy needs to be released. And so my writing days basically consist of when I get chance to, I come upstairs and hopefully sit down at my computer and I read a little bit of it and then get back into that character's mindset.
That
So,
is excellent.
I mean, one of the hard things right now, and I did that with Spirit of the Times too, both of those books are duets. So and so is Love is Worth Waiting For. Duets aren't hard for me to do. I've always written like that, but it's still you have to get into the mindset of each character and it's different because his mindset's going to be different than her mindset at all times. So
When you write a duet, do you find it easier to, focus on one point of view at a time, or do you switch back and forth during your writing?
I focus mainly on one person at a time. I took a creative writing class once and the teacher came in, she was a published author, and she tells one of the first things she tells us is do not write in dual points of view. This was the early 1990s. And she's like, you are not capable of doing that at this time. And mind you, I've been working on this 30-year novel, though it's not 30 years yet. It's 20 years. And so I go up to her after class. I'm like, can you read something I wrote? And she takes it and she comes back. the next class. And she goes, that doesn't apply to you. I'm like, okay. Because, the thing is, we are told, and you can go online and see how many rules you're not supposed to do. I did a podcast with somebody the other day, and they were saying something about the fact that you're not supposed to start a story with a dream. Well, Fairy Tales and I Love You starts off with a dream. But he's like,
so you're
his book,
basically
he was at a lecture breaking the rules.
yeah, you're
Yeah. And I
basically
mean,
taking all the things you're told not to do and then immediately putting that in your story.
and it's like, I'm not even doing it to just snub my nose. It's just, this is how I feel it needs to go. You're asking about the duet thing, and I kind of circumvented that question a bit, but the fact is, you have to sit there and really, there's occasionally a moment where somebody may jump into that other scene and give me their point of view. But 9 times out of 10, I will sit there and focus. Like I said, I take that rule of acting that I am being Nigel. I am writing this from a man's point of view. And that's one of the reasons why I did go by DM. And that's one of the reasons with Days, it's like, I had to, when I put that book out, I didn't want any question of, oh my gosh, a woman writing a man. This isn't going to fly. And so I released it as DM. I had guys read it and they're like, yeah, I would never have thought a woman wrote this. But I think it's a lot easier for women to write men than the other way. I'm not saying that a guy can't, but we've all seen those images on the internet of guys writing women, and they're like having no clue, no research of what a woman's cycle is like or anything else, and it's mortifying. So I think it's much
Absolutely
easier for
mortifying.
yes, I think it's much easier for a woman to write as a guy, and so to climb into that bravado, it's easy to do, and you just have to make sure that you're coming from that mindset when you're doing that duet, because you have to be in that moment. That's the only way to keep that character flowing easily without having the switch, as you would say. But they do try.
Do you have any advice for somebody who is working through a dual point of view in their writing?
Stay true to the character, stay true to what the voice is, what you're getting from them. I mean, this goes back to being intuitive. We all have connections, and we all know what guides us, and we all know what pushes us. Your character, however you are, I mean, most people, when they write, they have that character either in mind or they're getting that information somehow. Yes, it can be words, but I feel that when you are writing and you are in the flow, you're being guided divinely. And that may sound crazy to some people, but if the words are just coming and you don't even know where they're coming from, you have to be true to that voice of that character. So if you're sitting there writing and you want to write from a guy's point of view, but you're not comfortable, wow, if you're not comfortable in your divine masculine, if you're not comfortable in your masculine side of you, it's not going to come across true. In Days, there's a scene, my husband used to sit there and say that he was living vicariously through Nigel, that he is in bed with 3 women. Okay. And Nigel picks up this girl's head out of his crotch. He's not politically correct, people. He's not, but he picks up his head out of her crotch. What do I know about this? What do I know about any of this? And that's another rule, because we're always told, write what you know. Okay. But let's be honest here. If you only wrote what you know without doing any research or anything else in your life, isn't that going to limit your world that you're creating? I mean, how does a person who creates something like Lord of the Rings only write what they know? You would lose all your epic fantasies. You would lose so much more. In that vampire story, she starts out, it opens up with her. She's a vampire, but she's a dominatrix. This is how she gets her victims. Do I know anything about being a dominatrix? No. But with enough research, and that's the thing, I think you have to be true. So if you are in touch with your masculine side, you can write like a guy, as long as you are comfortable being somebody you may not want to be. And that's the hard thing, especially back to writing in the 80s. Politically correct did not exist in the 80s and the 90s, and we know that, and you have to be careful. And that's one that's, once again, you have to stay to where you know and where you're comfortable. And if you write something and just because you write something doesn't mean you have to keep it there. If it doesn't work for you and it makes you uncomfortable, then maybe this isn't the character you need to be playing with.
And I think it's really
Does that make sense?
important to be willing to cut up your story. Especially when it comes to like editing and stuff. We all love our stories and we love them how they are. And, whether through an editing process or beta readers or even an editor from a publishing company, they might rip it to pieces, cut it all up, chop it up, create something completely new. So I think it is important to be willing and comfortable to do that to your story, to cut it up, to rearrange it, to change what needs to be changed, to not only tell a cohesive story, but keep it authentic.
Well, and the other thing about this is, what you're talking about being having the story cut up, they're your baby. You've given birth to this. This whole process of writing it and creating it is a birthing process because you're trying to make everything flow. So you have to be comfortable and develop a thick enough skin that if somebody comes at you, you're not going to freak out. I remember the lowest review I got for Days was a 3-star review. And I'm not challenging anybody. I'm grateful that's the lowest I've ever gotten. But she basically wrote that she didn't understand what I wrote. It didn't make any sense to her. I'm like, okay. So it wasn't for you. It didn't, she wanted a rock star romance. It wasn't that. But because when I first released it, I called it My Days of Dancing with the Dark Muse. I had somebody say, "Oh, shorten the title, re-release it, da da da." So I did. She got it again, and she read it again. She still gave me 3 stars, and changed her review a little bit. But I was like, "But you read it again. If this was so bad, how come you read it again?" And so I think that's we have to be we have to take criticism when it comes from an editor, when it comes from our beta readers. We have to take that criticism and work with it. But reviews are a hot topic. We've seen that on the internet, that they say reviews are not for the author, but reviews are for the author because we glean marketing bits from there. But just like any kind of creative ability, whether it be a musician or an actor, that you're not supposed to take your reviews to heart. So you look at those reviews and go, they're subjective because that's that person's opinion. But when you're dealing with your beta reader, if you have a team of beta readers and they're all saying, "Hey, this is a problem," pay attention then. But if it's one person, you can't say, "I'm going to throw everything away because this one person is." And that's the thing we have to kind of walk a line with, is not to, if we trigger somebody, understand that maybe that's just that one person's trigger and it's not everybody's trigger. And as long as you put those in place, it's going to be okay. That
I
really
absolutely agree. No, it was good. So I'm actually glad that you brought up triggers. Do you use trigger warnings in your books? And if so, what are they?
Okay, here's the dangerous thing about me, because yes, I'm a woman of the 80s. We didn't have trigger warnings. We just picked up a book and we read.
It's definitely a
So
newer invention.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, here's the thing. Trigger warnings for me, yes, I have them on my website because I acquiesce to the general populace, because I feel trigger warnings at times can give away too much of that book. It's like, and that's why when I put it there, it says trigger warnings and spoilers, because one of them for one of my books is a secret baby. So that's kind of just letting you know that here, this is coming. As far as what are my trigger warnings, they're serious. Days has an attempted rape. Days has hardcore drug use. It has sex parties. It has a lot of taboo things. I don't remember all of my trigger warnings. In fairy tales, there is attempted rape, murder, suicide. Of course, language is in all of my books. There is older relationship with an older person, so age gap. So I do have a lot of content, and there is a lot of darkness in my books. I tend to skew a lot of realistic situations in them to deal with for my characters.
And I do agree with a point that you mentioned earlier as well. It is hard to navigate trigger warnings or content warnings without spoiling like major twists in a story. Obviously, there is a need for trigger warnings who want to have those, who want to know what's going to happen so that they know if this is something that they can read and be comfortable with. And I guess it's really up to the reader to decide, whether or not that's what they want to do. So I do like how you keep it on your website and you do list it as spoilers as well. And
I go on my website and each book, there's a picture of the book and then all the trigger warnings. And that way you can go in and see, okay, this is the book I want to read. This is what it is. And, here's the other lovely caveat. In the last book I wrote, Spirit of the Times, I ended with a happy ending. But to me, it just felt like, no, I don't want to leave it with a happy ending. And I know people hate cliffhangers. So what I did was there's a page right before the epilogue that says, if you want to keep your happy ending, do not turn this page.
oh, I love that. I love
So
that. That is amazing.
if you want to spoil it, there you go. Go have at it. And if you want to keep that happy ending until the next book, there's your happy ending. Because I felt like, I know people don't like cliffhangers, but then again, what's going to make you want more? What makes you want to read more? And a happy ever after is not going to necessarily make you want to read more,
Yeah, I
because you're
agree.
going
I
to think
do
that
love a
couple
good
is nice.
cliffhanger.
I do too. Unless the series gets canceled.
Oh, yeah, then it hurts.
Yes. So
Okay, so we've gone over so much of your life as a writer. Let's step into a little bit as into your life as a reader. So tell me, what is your all-time favorite book?
as silly as it seems, one of my all-time favorite books is Jackie Collins' American Star. And yes, it's total fluff and it's not high rating, it's not any, but I remember going to the library as a young mom to get my kids books, and this was sitting on the shelf. It had just come out. And I had read Rockstar before with her, and it took me a couple of days to read, not a big deal. But I picked up American Star and I got sucked in hard. And it was just like, okay. I sat up all night, kids are asleep. I sat up all night reading it until the next morning. And for me, to be able to sit down and read a book and be engrossed in it is it was amazing. I had never fully let myself, it would take days or weeks for me to finish a book. This book, for some reason, though, just, and I wanted more, there was no more. But that, in Interview with a Vampire, is another book that I really love a lot. But in when I was a kid, A Wrinkle in Time. But once again, American Star made such a point because it was salacious, it was scandalous, it was all these other little bits in there, and that's what really drove it. And a little off topic is, when I wrote Love Is Worth Waiting For, this girl in Australia, one of her reviews, and she's a friend now, she's an author. Um, she's like, yeah, her review says, I planned on reading a little bit and then I was going to put it down and do some work. She's like, by the time I got to the end of the book, it was dinner time and I couldn't put it down. And so having somebody else saying that about your book is just like high praise, because they got lost in it. And I think that's the gift of being a reader, is, and even a writer, is when you can make somebody get lost into a book. It's a mind-blowing experience because they just shut everything off. And it's rare to do that. It's rare for me to really get that engrossed, because always my mind is going with characters or life or whatever.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to play a little game called This or That. I've got just a list of a few things, and I'm going to give you two options, and you're going to tell me which you prefer. So we're going to start with reading in silence or having background noise.
Reading in silence. And the interesting thing is, I did create book. I first I had playlists for my books. I stopped doing that, but I prefer reading in silence.
Excellent. Coffee or tea?
Tea. Don't like coffee. Never have.
What kind of tea do you like?
Zen. I like chai now, and some Earl Grey. But it all depends with my mood, because I have tons of tea that I changed through. So
Do you pair your tea with what you are reading at the time? Is there like a
no,
mood?
No. One of my favorite teas, though, that is rare to find is amaretto tea.
Ooh, that
It's
sounds
very good.
good.
The Brunch
All right.
Cafe has it, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love them. So good.
Hmm.
Do you
They are.
prefer to buy new or buy used?
Books or
Yeah.
that's a hard question. I mean, a lot of my books now I buy the ebook. So I used to buy, I mean, some of my, like, I have a hardback copy of Jackie's book. I have a paperback copy. So some of those are used. Used to be one of my favorite places was Half Price Books, but I don't go there very often. But it used to be that I would say more or less a lot of the times I would pick used. The new book experience is nice, but budgetary concerns.
Yeah. And honestly, you can get a lot more books that way too.
Hmm.
And there's
Exactly.
nothing wrong with more books.
No, no, not at all.
Now that brings us to the next one, which is a three-part this or that. Physical, ebook, or audiobook.
Ooh, because audiobook has been skewing. I've been doing more audiobooks as of late. So I would say audio and ebook. Physical books, while they're nice, and I mean I have some for my own books, they're kind of cumbersome. They don't carry as well. They take up a lot of space. While they're nice, I'm gonna skew ebook or audiobook more now. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
absolutely get you with the cumbersome because I am a sucker for the physical books. And anytime I try to move, I've learned that you can't pack them in boxes or bins because they get way too heavy. So I collect canvas tote bags to carry all my books. I have so many that I don't have enough shelves for them. There are piles sitting on top of furniture. I am a sucker for the physical book. Though I have been getting
Understand.
into more audiobooks really just the last few months.
I have a lot of metaphysical books that you can't find anymore. So those I'm glad I have the physical book. And well, and I'll laugh. You can laugh this. I do have a lot of physical books like this of travel guides from look at the year 1985.
1985 travel guide.
Well, here's the thing. If I go online looking for someplace in my books, it may not exist anymore.
Yeah.
So this is a
Especially
way
if
for
you're
me.
talking like restaurants or, tourist
Exactly.
destinations. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's no way that some of the
So
things
yeah,
around today definitely wouldn't have been around then and vice versa.
sometimes the internet's favorable for that and other times it's not, but I'm sure people could look at that and go, why do you have these old travel books? Well, because it's research.
Research. Just always, why do you have research?
Research. Why do we have, if you're a writer, everybody jokes around that, yeah, if anybody checked my internet browser history, we'd be in trouble. I mean,
Right. We need an option that just selects I am a writer or
yeah,
this is research. Please don't call the
exactly.
FBI.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing, you have to, and the internet's not going to have everything you need. So sometimes you have to look for outside sources for your information.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we have one last this or that for you. Read at a beach or in front of a fireplace.
Hmm. It's a tough call because I mean either is peaceful, but I don't know. I would say fireplace because the beach is going to be distracting. If you have other people running around, the beach is going to be a little distracting.
Yeah, yeah, there can definitely be because, the question doesn't specify if it's a quiet beach.
No, no. I mean, and then if you have some person that's very good looking running along, diving into the water or whatever, you may get distracted with that. And I mean, there's a lot of different things. There's kids playing, there's sand being kicked in. Mm, a lot of distraction. A lot of distraction.
Yeah,
Anyway,
and fireplaces are cozy.
mm-hmm, that they are.
All right, so why don't you tell us where people can find your books and find you on social media?
You can find my books at most online booksellers. I do have a link on my website for draft to digital. Eventually, hopefully sometime later this year, I will be able to sell ebooks and paperbacks through my website, but that is something that has not happened yet. You can also find me on social media at DM Needom. All my links are actually on my website, which is www.dmneedom.com.
Okay, and I will be sure to have all of these links in the episode description, and I will be sharing them on the Must Love Books podcast Instagram and Facebook page.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, being on our little podcast. It has been a pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @Must Love Books Podcast. Thank you and happy reading.